Hello and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Wednesday, March 5th, and I'm Cynthia Connolly, Director of Programming at the City Club and moderator for today's forum. We are at the Happy Dog in Gordon Square for our Happy Dog Takes on Everything series. And tonight we are taking on Afrofuturism in fashion, film, and community. Don't say that 5 times fast. Marvel's 2018 film Black Panther not only broke box office records, it also changed perceptions of Black superheroes and African culture. As the first film to feature a Black superhero, the film's director and writers wasted zero time taking up space in an industry that traditionally lacks BIPOC representations. Joining the team was Ruth E. who was skilled in blending African American history and contemporary culture through fashion to showcase Black excellence. She won an Academy Award for her work in 2019. Now, through April 6th, Clevelanders will have the opportunity to be up close to the outfits created by Carter in conjunction with the Cleveland Orchestra's performance of Ludwig, Göransson's Oscar-winning score from Black Panther. Those performances are March 28th and 29th, and whoever wants to get tickets, you should definitely do that. And this display is a rare opportunity to see what it looks like when communities can tell their own stories through their creativity and shift narratives for lasting change. Joining us today to talk about Afrofuturism, power, and how a cultural movement can challenge traditional ideas in fashion and film is Joanna Brown, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Community Relations at the Cleveland Orchestra, who is hosting the exhibit. We have Alexandria Jackson, a costume designer with experience at places like Universal Studios Hollywood. You'll see me at Hogwarts drinking a butterbeer. And Sheila Wright, City Club board member, but mostly and most importantly, founder and president of the Crew Foundation, which aims to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive film and media industry for economic growth. Sheila, thank you. And thank you to all of you. So I want to get started here, first of all, with Joanna. When you think of the Cleveland Orchestra and you think of Black Panther, of course you think of the amazing films that they can play the score to. I personally saw the Harry Potter film, and those amazing lawn seats and over at Blossom Music. But I have not yet seen costumes on display at the orchestra. Why this?
When I had the idea for us to perform the score for Black Panther, I started looking at other orchestras to see how they performed the movie, like what were the wraparound events, and other orchestras had large events around the performances. So I started thinking about what could we do, and I had the opportunity to see the full Ruth Carter exhibit on display in Detroit in January of 2024. It's a display of 70 costumes across all of her work. She's done fantastic work with Spike Lee. She's costume designed for Selma, for Amistad, for She's Gotta Have It, Do the Right Thing. So she's been doing costume design for a long time. And of course, I was able to see the Black Panther costumes up close. And I came back to my organization and was talking with our archivist, Andrea Hoy, and was telling her, like, yo, they got this big exhibit. Like, we should try to bring it, if we ever are able to do Black Panther. And she was like, how many pieces? I said 70. I'm all excited. And she was like, you can do 4. So we, once it was confirmed that we were going to do the movie, then we moved forward with obtaining permission to display the costumes. And we love that we're able to bring more texture to the guest experience, and it's almost like a 3D experience. You get to see the costume, you get to see the film, and you also get to hear the score live.
And I remember you were telling me specifically about the location of where the exhibit is, about accessibility being really priority for the orchestra.
Yeah, so when we were discussing where to have the costumes on display, our chief brand officer, Ross Binney, made the suggestion for it to be publicly available in our Smith lobby. And so the Smith lobby is the same level as our box office. It's open. You do not have to pay to see the costumes. We wanted to make it accessible, so whether you were able to come to the film or to any other concert that's going on up until April 6th, you can still see the movie. You can still see the costumes, the 4 costumes that are on display.
And I'm gonna jump a little bit ahead from what I have in my notes, but I do want to know, like, how did you decide which costumes? You go from 70, and then they're like, nah, you get 4. How do you decide which ones to bring in? I mean, it's such a cool film. How did you do that?
Oh, it was definitely hard, but I ultimately was the one that selected all of the costumes. When we talked to Marvel, they were like, let us know which ones you want to display, and we'll see if they are available. So I chose Black Panther because obviously we needed to be able to see that costume. I chose Killmonger because he's the antagonist, and I didn't put I just said I want something from whatever he wore. So I didn't put like parameters around it. I did want Black Panther's mother, Queen Ramonda, which is played by Angela Bassett. I knew that I wanted one of her gowns, so we were able to get that. And then I felt like Black Panther needed to have one of his guards from the Dora Milaje, Okoye, with him, so that rounded out the 4th. If I could have added a few more, I would have did a Winston Duke's character. I think he has like the 8 looking suit, so, but he's big, and I don't know if we had enough space for him, so it worked out.
So Alexandria, I want to talk a little bit about Afrofuturism. And, this is something that we saw throughout Black Panther. I feel like it's a type of fashion design that not a lot of people may know about or even realize they're seeing. What is it exactly?
So right off my notes, Afrofuturism is a cultural aesthetic, philosophy of science, and history that explores the intersection of the African diaspora, culture with science and technology. So it's mostly associated with science fiction, but it can also encompass like fantasy, alternate history, and magic.
And we see Afrofuturism in a number of films, but this concept is not unique to just the Black experience. We see it in other films. I know for the Native American community, we see aspects of Native excellence in, for example, the film Prey, which is the prequel to the Predator series. And even though it's placed historically, there's still elements of like modern Native fashion that you may not have seen then, but still very much so resonates today. Tell me a little bit about how that type of fashion resonates with the modern community, particularly the Black community, when they see it.
So with Black Panther especially, I watched a lot of videos, but Ruth E really wanted to show Africa as somewhere that's modern, because it is. There's a lot of stereotypes of what Africa is, what Africa looks like, what Africans look like, and I think that with Afrofuturism, it's a lot like we're learning more about Black history, but we also want to learn more and think more about Black future. So incorporating the past with our present and the future.
And you were telling me that they used like 3D printing and things like that. You want to say a little bit more about the technique that Ruth used?
Yeah, there's a lot of new techniques, old techniques. So they used, for Ramonda's shoulders and the headdress that's seen in the first movie when Black Panther first comes to Wakanda. That's all 3D printed. But then there's also older techniques, like there's a lot of beadwork that was involved that's done by hand. A lot of the tribes that you see in like the waterfall scene, a lot of those come back to the original like African ethnic groups, and like people who are from those ethnic groups can like pinpoint those and recognize them. And then like with the Jabari and Baku's like armor, especially in the second movie, I think it was all wood, and they hand carved that, and then they were supposed to show vibranium in the chest part, and it was like a silver that you can see, and that was actually lead that they got a hammer and they just slowly like just molded it into the wood. So it's a lot of old ways of making things, new ways of making things, but I think that's like the best part about this.
You know, as a fashion designer and a costume artist, I'm curious when you see something like that reflected in film. For again, a lot of folks, that was the first time seeing Afrofuturism on film. What was it like to you, and has it influenced any of the direction you've taken? You know, as you were at Case Western getting your degree in costume design, is that something that you're seeing picked up more by students, or becoming more mainstream?
I definitely see it more mainstream, especially with the Marvel movies and TV shows. Like if you've seen Moon Knight, they did a lot of research on ancient Egyptian history. They had actual hieroglyphs that actually meant something written on the costumes that like reflected the character. Shang-Chi, that had a lot of Chinese influence with the folklore as well, the costumes. So I think that it definitely expands the thought of like what people can do, the different kinds of ways things can be done, and expands the thought around it.
And Sheila, you know, when we're thinking about the industry as a whole, I know the work that you do is pushing boundaries and really trying to increase the representation, particularly of BIPOC folks in the industry, not just as actors and things like that, but people carrying mics, people like holding cameras, doing editing. I want to just really quickly bring us back to a forum that we had at the City Club in Playhouse Square, and I believe Superman was filming right down the street. I know it's not Marvel; they're DC. I don't want to mix those two up. Adam will, yeah, you know, he's a big Marvel DC fan. So let's take us back to that day and like what it means to have these, you know, superhero films here in Cleveland and what that may mean for our community here.
Well, you know, at the time when Superman was here, when we had that conversation, you know, it was an opportunity, obviously, to showcase the fact that we were able to get a big production here. What that means is that we remain on the radar in Hollywood. And as long as we have a tax incentive, we will have projects that will come here until it's used up. You know, I think what it speaks to, though, is, you know, our agenda aside, which is to diversify this industry, but really to stand it up and grow it. What it speaks to is what I call the gas station analogy. And actually I borrowed that from a friend in Georgia, so I'm gonna give him credit. We have a motion picture tax credit that will bring projects here. That's it. That's like going to a gas station that only has gas. And so what we would like to do is find more ways for the industry to spend money and stay here longer. And so when we have a project like Superman, it's exciting. It puts us on the radar. But if you peel back the layers just a little bit, you learn that Superman did most of its production in Georgia because they have sound stages there, because they have an uncapped tax there. We're getting there. We're working on it. So I don't want to take away from the work that we're doing. We should see that as encouragement to keep trying. But I think that in order for us to have to move beyond a tertiary market, we're going to have to stand up the local production economy. I believe that. There are people here who work every day in this space, and they're not big films that come here. And so I just think with a film school here, and Tri-C, and the passion that people have, I think we have an opportunity here.
Are you seeing, with something like, this Black Panther exhibit being on display, what are the opportunities to really leverage this as a moment to increase the number of BIPOC costume designers in particular? Because, when we think of film production, everyone, they think of the big equipment and the tech and the helicopters and all that, but there are so many people behind the scenes. And I want to get to the hair too in a minute. About Black Panther, but there's so many people behind the scenes doing costume design. Like Alexandria, I think you said you had to create your own way through Case Western for your degree in costume design. What efforts are being done to improve that here in Cleveland?
So I think, these kind of conversations obviously help. I think part of what the Crew Foundation would like to advance, part of our agenda is to create space for creatives overall. So when you talk about these costumes that are at the orchestra, what they represent in terms of this Afrofuturism, this convergence of cultural shift in thinking, that gets people excited. And so I think the opportunity there, if you talk about BIPOC costumers or people just working as part of the production of a set, we want to tap into the dignity that Black Panther brought to our community, the cultural and the political shifts and the coding of how we perceive Black people, the dignity in our cultural and political agendas around the dignity of our diaspora, right? Mm-hmm. Those blended, rich, textural conversations is how you attract creatives to the space. And then, just like any other creative opportunity, it explodes from that. So, we got to make sure we drive traffic there. Joanna and her team has been doing an incredible job of marketing this event. But I encourage those that are listening, those that are here, to encourage your networks to go there. That was a Herculean task for her to get those costumes here. It wasn't just that she got, there may be 70 costumes in that exhibit. She got the key costumes here at a world-class institution like the Cleveland Orchestra. So that convergence of music and culture and fashion, that's kind of how Afrofuturism works. It allows you to reimagine and operate outside of the paradigms in which we've had for so long. So I think we just need to converse and talk about it a little more. The City Club lean in is helpful to this, if you will. But encourage people to come, and I applaud you, Joanna, for doing that.
You know what, Sheila, what I want to add, especially with what Alexandria was saying about Afrofuturism, it really is a counter narrative. When we think about what people are used to seeing on the stage, you used to seeing slavery movies, you used to seeing Black people just in a more subordinate position. And this movie starts out the gate dispelling that myth. And so
revolutionary.
It's very revolutionary. And then when you see the costumes and the level of detail and excellence, and the fact that Ruth Carter won her first Academy Award, her first Oscar for these costumes. The costumes that are on display are the ones that she won her first Academy Award for. And that also gave Marvel its first Oscar. So when you think of it set the stage for quite a bit. And the more that we're able to disrupt this notion that there's only a certain demographic that is open to hearing classical music and open to experiencing music across different genres, that's what this experience brings. It brings more to Severance Music Center and continues to reinforce our commitment to serving the community, the entire community.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about, I'm hearing some stuff about authenticity that I think is at the root of a lot of this. This film could have easily just hired somebody out of Hollywood and, hit some travel prints on a couple of outfits and been like, oh, we're good, right? This is fine. But they didn't. And I mean, a lot of it is because we have directors like, Brian Coogler, right, who said, not in my house. When we talk about experience and authenticity, is this a shift in costume design of itself? Are we seeing like a trending shift, or is it more intentional, like because we had that director? Or yes, and Sheila, go ahead.
I think it's a combination of that and more. Audiences, believe it or not, are, just because of the way information is shared and how fast we can receive information, are those that are interested in these stories are relatively sophisticated, right? Even those that may be a mainstream fan, right, who don't follow it, are becoming more sophisticated, even if they don't recognize it, because we are in a place where you can peel back the shade, if you will, and see what things are made of. And whether it's food, whether it's furniture, whether it's an organization, this level of transparency has become cultural because of the internet, because of how fast information shifts between us. And so once you have that experience and you see something that is not authentic, it tastes different, right? And once you've tasted authentic food, had an authentic experience, you just don't want anything else. But I will say this, even with that in mind, the fact that the studio gave Ryan the autonomy to be authentic and make those decisions, that matters. And that's why it's important. I don't know who in the studio decided to go ahead and greenlight Ryan Coogler to do this film, but it was a great bet, if you will. And I think he understood the opportunity. We talked about this before. I don't know how many of you saw the most recent Captain America, and people are saying, well, it didn't do well. Why didn't it do well? It's woke culture, whatever people are, these narratives. And the thing that I have said about that was that Black Panther advanced culture. It connected with our community. It tapped into our dignity. Captain America, which is a story that we all love, we identify with that character in a different way. And really what you did was just switched it out for a different person. And so there was nothing in the marketing of that and the selling of that in the trailers that said to me that it was truly inclusive. Because diversity is not the same as inclusion, right? Inclusion means that you create space for all of the person and the layers of who they are and their agency to show up. He just put on that shield. So it's that authenticity, I think, was baked in the storyline.
Yeah.
It was baked in the writing, and so it would have done a disservice not to bring that into every detail. And I mean, if you take some time and look at, and Alexandria can speak to this. I mean, the threading, the beating, the sets, the music, the way they walked, the way they. I mean, everything was so well thought out.
Yeah, Alexander, you were telling us about these videos that you watched that showed the journey of creativity, and that being one of the drawing points of why Afrofuturism, particularly in Black Panther, was so groundbreaking. Because not only did we get to see the costumes on film, the process of how they were created was essentially documented and shared with the public. Talk a little bit about that.
I think especially with my generation, a few younger ones too, we really appreciate the storytelling, which costume design is all storytelling.
Feel free to lean into that mic and eat it a little bit. Just so we can hear you in the back.
Yeah. So costume design is so much storytelling. It's psychology. It's like culture. It's so much, and everything. Film and theater and everything is so. It's a combination. You can't have one without the other. So I think that with Just people are more interested in how things are done, the ideas that went through to get to this point. Even some of the like high fashion companies, houses that I've seen, like Dior, they now show videos of like how their bags are made or things like that. So I think more people are interested in like the journey on how we got here instead of just seeing the final product and just taking it from there. With Black Panther, a lot of the videos that I saw, she talked about, Ruth talked about which ethnic groups particularly, like this came from here, like Queen Ramonda's headdress was, I think, South African married woman's headdress, and it was actually like inspired from that. So I think that more people are interested in the storytelling, but and the journey on how to get there.
I mean, it was educational, right? I mean, it was a way of teaching, broader like community and country and world about essentially Black excellence in like a topic that wasn't really taught to much of us at all in school.
And you know what was so key to that point of Black excellence? This was an uncolonized country. Okay? It was uncolonized and it had gone thousands of years with no wars and no strife.
And they juxtapose that with Killmonger.
With Killmonger, right. So they were, in this bubble, if you will, but it just there's that Afrofuturism again, imagining something outside of what's been coded. But if you think about a people, years of no strife, years of no war, and uncolonized, and being able to blend that perfect blend of nature and technology, yeah.
I mean, just actually, when you add that, the level of just intentionality around positioning Wakanda in this very mineral-rich country, it was, they were unapologetically Black. They were unapologetically contained. Like, that was on purpose. Because while they had strife, it wasn't that they were conflict-free, because conflict was, when you have multiple people, you're bound to have conflict. So there was always friction. But the fact that they were able to thrive within that level of friction, without other people influencing them, was tremendous. And it also just positioned the narrative around Black characters. Even though that was a character, it was a positioning of Black excellence, not just in the future, but in the now. And so being able to connect the future and being able to see that, hey, we have hidden figures, we have people who are have STEM backgrounds and IT backgrounds that are just as smart as the Shuri character. And so being able to see yourself in that film in various ways. And I do want to point out that for the 3D printing, you can see that on display. Like the Queen Ramonda gown that's on display, her crown is 3D printed. So you're able to see it. It's good floppy.
Wakanda, firsthand, 3D printing. Well, on this note, let's talk a little bit about, the hair in Black Panther. That's actually, when you talk about the videos, that was one of the first times I seen a video like that. And it was with the hairdressers talking about the intentionality behind the hair that they chose for each of the characters. That's just like such a politically charged conversation here in this country about policing, particularly Black women and their hair. Do you want to talk a little bit about, I don't know, you, maybe Sheila, about how is that coming through in the?
When you think about, there's a lot of policing of Black bodies, whether it's tone, whether it's how we talk, how we dress. There's a lot that centers white comfort. And so when you have this movie that totally disrupts that notion, totally centers the Black experience and how Black people can show up, that's what's made it such a powerful film. You know, we have the Black Panther #3 coming out. I'm really excited to see what that's going to be. But when we think about what they experienced, what they showed in small glimpses in the movie, you know, you see Queen Ramunda in her regalness. You know, then you see Shuri, you see all the different characters, the Dora Milaje, those that are strong and warriors, and you see that warrior spirit across all genders and ages in the movie. But there also is a level of when they are outside of Wakanda, how do they show up? And they, so there's a level of discomfort when they're like, okay, look, I got to put all this stuff on because there's an expectation of performance. There's an expectation of fitting in or an assimilation. And so you see that struggle with the characters as they move from Wakanda to other parts of the world, and how they have to try to not be, they can't really be their authentic self. And so you actually see that in the movie, and I think that that's just a small snippet of what some people have to go through. I mean, I went through it myself when we talk about here. Now I joined the Gray Brigade, fully embracing it. But before then, I've had people tell me, when I would change my hair, when it was more straighter, oh, you look more professional now. So it's definitely a lot, and it's a lot that other Black women can have similar experiences.
We see that in other places too, unexpectedly but unsurprisingly. When you're thinking of things that are white coded, Alphaba from Wicked on the stage, white coded, but then you put Cynthia Erivo in the space, and suddenly people are like, "Oh my gosh, I never realized there were such racial undertones to Wicked." I'm like, "Are we watching the same movie?" But sometimes it takes that, right? Where you really just are unapologetically authentic. And is, I think, what made Cynthia Erivo's portrayal of Alphaba resonate, particularly with the Black community. You're talking about Captain America that just came out versus Wicked.
That's right.
I feel like that's exactly what was happening there.
And,
Ariana Grande?
Yeah, what's her name?
Linda. Or Galinda.
For Galinda to say, Linda, I'm going to fix you.
Yeah.
That is like the heart of paternity, right? It's like, I just need to be. There's nothing wrong with me.
She also said, "You're green." And she goes, "I am."
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so one thing that stood out to me when I saw the movie Wicked was I was pissed off the whole movie until like the last 30 minutes where it started clicking. And there's one line that Michelle Yeoh says. She calls Alphaba Wicked. Never in the movie had that label been put upon her. And it was then that everybody responded to this label, and how, even though it was a projection of who Michelle Yeoh is, she was able to label her, and that stuck with her. And when I think of how we navigate life, how many Black women have been labeled, aggressive, or too whatever, too loud, too this, too that. All these labels that can be put on characters and put on people, and it carries through with the things that they're trying to do. So that stuck out to me in regards to that movie, and that made me like it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool with Wicked. She really, Cynthia Erivo really wanted to have a wig that showed her own hair. So it was, oh my goodness, I think like the wig maker made it in like 3 days. It was like multiple ladies just braiding one wig for 3 days. But I thought it was really cool that she wanted that representation for herself and that kind of like connection with the audience that looks more like her.
I would say that the costume designer just won the Oscar for best costume design. First Black male to win the award just happened on Sunday. I believe his name is Paul. Paul Tazwell. Thank you. Of course, Paul Tazwell.
He's from here.
He's from Akron, right? Yeah, he's from Akron. Like you can see elements of the Afrofuturism in that costume design too. In some cases, not even worn by Black actors. Do you want to talk a little bit about that really quick before we get to audience Q&A? We're going to move to that shortly.
I have to probably watch it a second time.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Alphaba has some really cool nails, and that was an intentional choice by her as well. Yeah, having the nails. We're going to get to audience questions here in a quick second. I do want to do one more question. So if you have a question, feel free to line up right over here for the Q&A, and we'll get moving on that. But my final question to you is talking about and it's kind of the big elephant in the room that really needs to be addressed. The recent attacks on DE&I, this anti-woke movement. I'm wondering how you see this impacting creativity, opportunity, and agency, if you will. Like, will there be more Ryan Coolers in the industry? I'm gonna start with you, Sheila.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so much art is birthed out of struggle and oppression. And look, DEI, the attack on DEI, just to be clear, and I think people understand that, is an attack on Black people, period. It's just a coded word. It's just a coded word to stop that progress and to try to beat that progress back. And it's an easy scapegoat. It's an easy thing to attack. It's just designed. It's propaganda. I tell people all the time, there was the oppression of people during times of chattel slavery in this country, and then it was the propaganda to sell the idea that we weren't human. Okay, that's the part that we still live with. So that's one thing. In terms of opportunity, I hope and pray that we're not going back there, but during times, whether it was Black people or Jewish, whoever it was, when you are forced to keep your dollars in your community, when you are forced to do business with yourselves, when you are forced to when you are forced to do that, believe it or not, there's strength in that. I'm not saying that we need to be a segregated society, but what I am saying is people have been asking for a long time, what is the thing that would unify, that would create a universal Black consciousness? And in my lifetime, the only thing that I saw that was positive that did that was the election of Barack Obama. Otherwise, the universal, the universal Black consciousness based on experience here in this United States was all about pain and suffering, right? The consciousness of struggle, the consciousness of separation. Our wins was about separation. Who could get off the plantation? Who was the first one to graduate? Who was the first attorney? It was all about being first and different and separate. And historically in this country, when we were forced to be together, we didn't see it as a positive because it was framed in a way of lack and framed in a way of you can't have something. Well, now, I'm not saying we're there, but I tell you, people are rethinking it. People are thinking about their relation to one another. And, unfortunately, like I said, DEI is an easy target, but the truth of the matter is that's a distraction because the true issue is an economic issue. Racism is an issue, but the true issue is an economic issue. And as long as you have people believing that DEI is the reason they can't get a job, DEI is the reason why their kid can't advance, DEI is why they can't afford eggs. As long as you have them believing that, they will vote against their own interests. And so I'm not saying we've been here before, but we've been close. We've been close.
We're gonna move to the audience Q&A. This is largely for our live stream audience or those just joining via our live stream. I'm Cynthia Connolly, Director of Programming at the City Club and moderator for today's forum. Joining me on stage is Joanna Brown, Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations at the Cleveland Orchestra. We also have Alexandria Jackson, a costume designer, and Sheila Wright, founder and president of the Crew Foundation. If you are here with us in person, please line up next to the microphone on my left to ask your question. If you are joining us virtually or prefer to text your question in, we have Adam over here who's keeping an eye on our text line. You can text that to 330-541-5794. I encourage you to get to the mic though. I mean, we're here, might as well. And we'll try to work that in. I do have some text questions already though that Adam has sent over. And just again, a reminder to keep your question short, to the point, actually a question, so we can get to as many as possible. And I'm going to get to one text question that Adam sent over. What has been the biggest hurdle in bringing the concerts and the art exhibit to Cleveland? I think that's for you, Joanna. The biggest hurdle.
Well, the biggest hurdle would be financial, because there's a financial investment. It was not the willingness of the Cleveland Orchestra, my colleagues. They were willing to take this chance with me. And I think that as we have gone on, they're definitely all in now. This bringing this exhibit to Severance Music Center and the wraparound events that are around this is actually engaging the entire organization. So it's not just on the diversity, equity, inclusion, and community relations. There's education and community engagement. There's our archivist. There's our production manager. There's hall staff. There's engineers. Literally, all of our philanthropy and advancement. Everybody is engaged in helping us bring this to life. So I would say it's more so the financial investment that it takes to bring them.
Joanna, if I can also follow up on that really quick. You saw the full exhibit, right? Ruth's exhibit in Detroit.
Yes.
What else was, I mean, assuming it wasn't just a bunch of costumes on display, I'm sure there was like a whole thing, because we actually have another text question that was asking about how Afrofuturism has evolved over the years, past 50 or 20 years. I would even say from the first Black Panther to today. Does Ruth's exhibit talk about that?
Her exhibit is actually on Afrofuturism, and so you're able to see the arc of her work from when she first started out to where she is now. It has actually both of the Black Panther movie characters in the movie there. So if you're interested, it will be on display. The closest now is Indianapolis. So check it out. It'll be on display starting sometime in March. This is March. But it shows just the level of intricacy and detail and the complexity of the garments. When you think about the second Black Panther movie, one of the things that I recall Ms. Carter talking about was how that movie is filmed underwater. So you really your garments had to be able to do certain things. And they were very intentional about making sure that the garments could perform what the characters, what was being asked of the characters. So there's just taking it to that next level, and Ruth doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon.
I hope not. There is a question that we have. It says, and Alexandra, I think you might be able to answer this one. If future generations were to look back at the current rise in Afrofuturism, what values would you hope they clearly understood?
Probably a different kind of self-love, and a pride in the history that you have and how people are so different, but they're so together.
Yes.
That word. I think that with people can now see like there's different stories that can be told, and there's so many pieces and parts of people and individuals, and that can break stereotypes. And people are more, they can believe more. Like with Sam Wilson as the Captain America, they said that he was somebody who people could aspire to. So I think that Afrofuturism can give people something to see themselves, see their future, and kind of imagine a future with them.
Yes. It was so good.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Sheila, did you have something to add? I saw you leading in.
I'm not following that. That was a great
That was
answer.
great.
I would say,
Go ahead.
imagine them seeing a future with themselves in it and they're thriving,
Yeah.
which is something very different. Like you can see yourself in the future, but in Wakanda, there's an element of thriving that is experienced across everyone that's there.
There's a question here, although it might be a little comic booky, but I'm gonna do it. I think why do you think so many people are drawn to the styles, both in literature, which I would assume is comics, in this case, and fashion of Afrofuturism? And I'm gonna just add to that is I know that comics, like this type of style, particularly having superheroes of color, they have been doing this for some time. Like this is not new to them. I know that there's a number of Native American comic book characters that have been around before anything ever picked up in mainstream media for modern superheroes and characters. So what would you say, why are people so drawn to this? I know we talked about authenticity, we talked about, that kind of agency in it, but when you're thinking of somebody who may be outside of, this is my culture, someone outside of that, why do you think they're drawn to that? I'm looking at Sheila.
So you're saying, I just want to understand the question. You're saying like, why would other audiences be drawn to Afrofuturism? The same reason why audiences are drawn to Black culture. It's a sign of liberation. It's something, if you removed, Black people from Afrofuturism, you just take it away and just talk about just the culture of it, right? The culture is its own thing, if you will. And I think that, I personally think it's the convergence of fantasy, style, reimagining, dignity. There's so many points that it takes on and opportunities to meet various agendas, and so I think people will be attracted to that. It's strong, it's real, it's not something that's been manufactured. There's texture to it. It's like seasoning on food, right? It's just, I'm just honest.
Yeah. I think we have a question here.
A little short, so okay.
That's
That's
okay,
okay.
Shane.
He said to eat the mic. I don't know if I can do that, but just want to say thank you, City Club, and also to our panelists. My question is really for any one of you who want to answer. So, one of you had mentioned that it's so important to be able to see yourself in this space, so that that's a part of being encouraged and a part of what is helpful for especially our young folk. So what is it, what advice might one of you give or all of you give for our aspiring young folks in the room as they look at careers in this industry, and if there was something that you could do differently, what would that be?
Okay, I go. Anyone aspiring in this industry, but particularly young people, the power in the power of storytelling shifts consciousness, right? I mean, that's the way you begin to familiarize people with things. You make it familiar. You make it um, common, not common, but normal. You normalize certain things. And so there's power in that because we still have a lot of narratives that rise up against the dignity of who we are. And so I would just say, consider the power of storytelling and doing this work and know that you can actually shift consciousness. Actors and film allow us to see parts of ourselves and express parts of our humanity that we don't like to always showcase, right? We wear these suits, we don't walk around with our hearts on our sleeve, we don't talk about how it feels to have to, change our hair or change our language. But when you have the power and the freedom of storytelling, you make that okay and you take us on a journey with you. So I would just say that piece. And in terms of what would I do differently in terms of the industry or the
I
space?
think, that was the question.
Is that what you were saying?
In your journey to where you are in the industry, yeah.
Oh, I would have started a long time ago. That's number one. And number two, I think I would have, I think I would have honored the space that I hold because I have a natural curiosity around how things are made. So that area of the piece of production, I thought I was going to be a comedian. I just happen to love comedians, right? I thought I was going to do these things, and so I think I would have honored that space a little more, and I probably would have lent my service to this space much earlier in my life.
Sheila, I'd come to your stand-up.
You would?
I totally would. Absolutely.
Don't get me started.
Keep the dream strong, Sheila.
I would probably say definitely your story is worth telling. Just because you don't think that anyone will watch your show, anybody will like the costume that you make it anyway. That's probably the thing that I would say the most. Because even just put it out there out in the universe and somebody will like it, somebody will think it's cool, even if they don't, it's out there. And also, I think another thing that I would say is just you have to kind of sometimes make it your own way. At Case, they didn't have a costume design major. I had to make it myself. When I said that I wanted to study abroad, I got out of my own school. So sometimes you gotta do a little digging, sometimes you gotta ask some questions, and sometimes you gotta put yourself out there and look kind of stupid, but you'll get there eventually. As far as what I would do differently, I would choose. I probably would have done this earlier or put myself out there earlier.
You're doing it now.
Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. All right, we have one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
Thanks for the panel. My question really is around, we talked about Afrofuturism, but also I wonder, what one thing do you want them to retain from the past as we advance and move forward with this particular art form?
Sure. When you think about what I want people to retain from the past is that we are complex. We're complex, we're not a monolith. And so when you think about the past, you cannot have a future without the past. So it's incumbent upon us to learn, to glean, to some things you hold And then some things you allow to blossom into something different. And so being open to being able to make that pivot as necessary, I think goes a long way. And when we think about, when I think about my history and who I come from, while the it may have manifested in different ways, there's still a strength, there's still faith, there's still tenets of my history that I carry with me all the time. And so just being able to see that through line, that it may have manifested differently depending upon the times, but also know that there's still some things that are just part of our DNA, and that's okay to continue to have.
And I think there's power in telling your history first, which hasn't really been offered to a lot of communities of color. Your history in your own voice, in your own word, with your own pen. And we're seeing that happen now.
I mean, when we think about Black Panther, there's a lot of the intentionality of being able to tell the story, the narrative. The director is Black, the characters are Black, the actors and actresses are Black, even the soundtrack and the different people who contributed to the soundtrack, they are Black artists. The costume designer was Black. All of this helps to tell a story, and it helps to bring a lens that is often muted. And so being able to really amplify that and shine light on it really makes this movie iconic and special.
Thank you so much for all of the work you're doing to bring this exhibit and this opportunity to Cleveland. It is honestly one of the coolest things ever, huh? Oh, it's here through April, I think it's the 9th? April 7th.
The art exhibit, the costume exhibit is here through April 6th. It'll be on public display through April 6th. But the movie, you'll be able to see the movie and hear the fantastic Cleveland Orchestra perform the score live Friday, March 28th and Saturday, March 29th. Tickets are still available. Check us out at Cleveland Orchestra.
Göransson's score. I had to look up how to pronounce that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very proud.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I am looking forward to it. It's going to be amazing. Thank you once again to Joanna, Alexandria, and Sheila for joining us at the Happy Dog. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech and make a donation today at cityclub.org. Today's forum is also part of the City Club in the Community Series sponsored by Bank of America. And be sure to join us the first Wednesday of the month through May this year. Same time, same place for another Happy Dog conversation just like this one. You can learn more about these upcoming forums and others. They actually just posted 4 more on the website yesterday at cityclub.org. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you, members and friends of the City Club, both here and streaming live. I'm Cynthia Connolly, and this forum is now adjourned.